Is the Super Bowl the secret hub of the world's largest sex trafficking ring? Every year, the Super Bowl is one of the most watched sporting events, with millions tuning in around the United States and thousands more spend ungodly amounts of money to attend the event in person. While for some, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, many of the more well-off attendees are able to make this an annual trip. Their presence has garnered a substantial amount of suspicion, and considering the things that have come to light in the recent years, these suspicions are only growing. Do the rich elite gather together to celebrate sports and beer, or is something far more sinister going on behind the scenes? Welcome back to Critical Theories, and today we will be taking an in-depth look at the accusations of what really goes on at the Super Bowl. Without any further ado, let's dive into it. The NFL certainly knows how to advertise. Year after year, the championship game brings in around 100 million viewers. Some are there to cheer on the teams, some tune in for the halftime show, and others still are there for the legendary lineup of Super Bowl commercials. Gathered in tight-knit groups around their TVs at home and in bars across the country, many dream of attending the game in person someday. On average, only around 100,000 fans are able to attend the big game each year, and it comes at a hefty price, with tickets going for $2,000 or more. Among those who can afford to attend the event year after year are the likes of celebrities, sports stars, and politicians. The rich and powerful gather in the luxury boxes, separated from the everyday fans, surrounded by all the decadence money and fame can buy. Some have suggested that this includes things that are less savory and far from legal. They believe the Super Bowl may be one of the biggest events for human trafficking in the world. While it is certainly a sensationalized version of human trafficking, events similar to those depicted in the Taken trilogy are an everyday occurrence around the globe. Human lives come at a premium, and there are those among the world's richest people who are willing to pay that price. Groups like Thorn and the IJM, along with government agencies like ICE in the United States, work to free as many trafficked people as they can, but the problem persists. The adage remains true, unfortunately, that where vice exists, there will always be someone willing to take advantage. Human trafficking is considered the largest form of slavery in the modern world. The groups you would expect to be attached to such a despicable enterprise are involved, of course. Various mafias and dictatorships around the world are consistently mentioned in the same breath as human trafficking rings. Unfortunately, just as often, you will hear names that might surprise you. Government leaders and celebrities from around the world who preach freedom, peace, and human rights have been included in these investigations at an alarming rate. In recent years, the life and crimes of Jeffrey Epstein have come to light, and the people implicated have shocked the public. However, all the attention on people like Epstein has brought any large gathering of secretive rich folks under intense scrutiny. The Super Bowl specifically has come under fire in recent years, and not only because a lot of people suspected of human trafficking and sex crimes are in attendance. There have been a surprising number of actual investigations and convictions regarding illegal activities that occur behind closed doors in these luxury boxes. In 2014, for example, a prostitution and drug ring was busted at the Super Bowl, arresting 18 members who had intended to deliver party packs of drugs and sexual favors to the more affluent partiers at the event. The 11-month investigation culminated in uncovering a widespread operation that included drugs, money laundering, and prostitution, and potentially suggested that there was more going on under the surface than had been revealed. In this case, the secretive business was uncovered because some of the sellers were scamming their clients out of thousands of dollars, creating a paper trail long enough to build a case against the operation. Even before that, however, in 2011, a report was released that indicated tens of thousands of sex workers that would flood the city where the Super Bowl was being held in the days leading up to the game. While some were traveling on their own, it was indicated that not all of them were making the trip of their own will. The report claimed that many of them were suspected to be victims of trafficking operations. Who was paying for all these sex workers to be brought in remained a mystery at the time. In recent years, however, some believe they have cracked the case. In 2019, then CEO of the New England Patriots, Robert Kraft, was arrested for soliciting a sex worker on multiple occasions. The investigation led law enforcement to believe that the illicit activities were performed at various places and times, including the Super Bowl in Atlanta. A year later, after an extensive investigation and seemingly having Kraft dead to rights, the charges were mysteriously dropped. Kraft pleaded not guilty, but did release an apology statement about the incident. Beyond his apology, however, the situation was dropped, and any news of his illegal activities was buried, including the sex crimes that may have been committed at the Super Bowl itself. Are you enjoying this video? Do you want to see more like it? We have great news for you then. Subscribe to our channel, and you'll find all the theory content you could ever ask for right at your fingertips. Don't delay. You don't want to miss out on what we have next. Now, back to the video. In an article released by the Anti-Trafficking Review, these suspicions and more were analyzed. While the review did not find a definitive connection between human trafficking and the big game, they recognized that the circumstances surrounding the accusations are certainly suspect. This report, which included research conducted by the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Center of the University of California, utilized over 90 sources on the matter, identifying more than 50 of them as being empirical and relatively unbiased. When comparing the rates of sex trafficking reported during the Super Bowl to other sports events around the country, they noted that the numbers stayed relatively consistent, seeing no significant rise in non-consensual sex work during the NFL championship game. However, they note that this does not imply that there is no connection to sex trafficking overall. The evidence merely suggests that if the business is attached to the Super Bowl, it's because it's attached to sporting events overall. Which, when you think about it, makes sense. Large gatherings of people make for great hiding places for illicit activities. Organized crime and drug dealers have been known to use crowded events such as concerts, fairs, and more to conduct their business without raising unnecessary suspicion. Under that lens, sporting events, including the NFL playoffs, would fit the bill. The reports also indicated that sex work and human trafficking become harder to identify and track during major sporting events such as the Super Bowl and the World Cup. These events bring in massive crowds, but they also bring a massive police presence. This forces many of these workers to constrict their operations to avoid detection, going underground and using different channels to find clients. So while the presence of sex workers seems to be increased, the ability to track traffickers and sex work operations is hampered, ironically, by the presence of law enforcement. These circumstances definitely muddy the waters. Reporting on these crimes becomes harder to accomplish. Scientifically speaking, one cannot prove a negative, so proving empirically that there absolutely is not a sex ring would be an uphill battle. Finding proof that there is no sex trafficking ring surrounding the Super Bowl is an impossible task. Proving that there is one is appearing to be just as impossible, however. The evidence makes the situation very difficult to piece together. There does seem to be evidence that sex work, including to some extent sex trafficking, increases with the presence of sports events. But is the Super Bowl the hub of a gigantic sex ring? It's hard to say one way or the other. The International Justice Mission has made it a goal to get to the truth of the matter. Upon examining the evidence, they believe the issue may be one of awareness. While trafficking may not rise significantly during the Super Bowl, news outlets' coverage of such things brings the business back to the public eye. People may simply be more conscious of human trafficking and more on the lookout for reports of it, which makes these reports bigger hits. With the attention it gets, the news will continue to run these stories and keep people up to date on them, which creates a self-perpetuating cycle of awareness and reporting. This can make it seem as if the problem is more widespread than it actually is. And while it's comforting to know that at least part of the problem is recency bias and catchy news headlines, you may notice that one glaring issue has been ignored this entire time. There has been no mention of what is happening in the boxes. There is not talk of what is happening with people like Robert Kraft during their Super Bowl celebrations. Ultimately, this comes down to a lack of information. There seems to be no definitive evidence one way or the other about the activities of the rich and famous. This may seem like a disappointing conclusion, but the answer is that the mystery will always remain. There is no way to prove that these heinous things are not happening behind closed doors. There is also no current concrete proof that these things are happening. So those who believe the theory will continue to believe, and those who do not believe will also continue to hold their position. The problem with suggestion is that it has a tendency to shape people's reality, regardless of whether there is any truth to the matter. People do not trust their leaders, and they don't trust the news either. So any attempt at changing someone's mind one way or the other will prove to be an arduous task. The best case scenario is for the facts to be laid out, and for everyone to form their own conclusions. So hop down in the comments and let us know what you think. Do you think the Super Bowl conspiracy is fact or fiction? What would you like for us to cover next? We would love to know your opinions. This has been Critical Theories. Thanks for watching.